We have finally made it to the last of the current shotguns in Modern Warfare. We've seen some good one-shot kill ranges, we've seen some insane two-shot kill ranges, and we've seen some spammy 25-round goodness, but now we're here with one of the most polarizing, in my opinion, guns in this whole game. This gun has received at least 3 different nerfs on separate occasions, and prior to these nerfs, it was virtually impossible to find a lobby without at least 3 people running this gun. To be honest, this gun was single-handedly ruining the game for me. It featured an unfathomable one-shot kill range with extremely forgiving hip fire and ADS spread that was virtually impossible to counter with anything but another 725. We had an infestation that we haven't seen in Call of Duty for quite a while. Luckily, the devs were able to respond to the community's cries, and they were able to take this gun down a few big notches since its initial introduction. It went from being a joke in the beta to an unstoppable noob cannon cheese gun to a still somewhat annoying but more balanced than it was double barrel. Of course, I'm talking about the infamous 725 shotgun, and this is my ultimate shotgun guide for this beast of a shotgun. We're going to go over some of the in-depth stats and numbers, and it's going to be a long episode, so buckle up for this one. I just want to say that I recorded all of this footage using DaVinci Resolve, which is a free video editing program, and it's captured around 60 frames per second. If you want to jump to any specific part of my testing, I will leave timestamps in the description below, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. And without further ado, let's hop right into this with the barrels for the 725. For the 725, there are 3 barrels to choose from. We have the Tempest Smoothbore, the Sawed-Off, and the Competition Barrel. The Tempest Smoothbore is a shorter barrel that widens spread and increases how fast you can aim down sights. The Sawed-Off does the same thing, but overall I found it to be much better in a few different ways I'll go into. And then we have the Competition Barrel, which is the largest barrel of them all, and the one most suitable for having the longest one-shot kill range, over all the shotguns too, I might add. It also features the tightest pellet spread of them all. Looking at the spreads, you'll see the Sawed-Off and the Tempest Barrel will widen your spread, while the Competition Barrel really tightens it. And more important than that is the one-shot kill range we can get with these barrels equipped. As you can see, the base barrel has a pretty decent one-shot kill range, while the Tempest Smoothbore shortens that length just a little bit, and of course the Sawed-Off barrel really decreases that one-shot kill range potential. When we take a look at the Competition Barrel though, you'll see it features the longest one-shot kill range by a little bit compared to the base barrel. Now if you recall, this gun has been nerfed around 3 times in the past, so don't be expecting this gun to get the insane, completely overpowered one-shot kills you were able to get in the past, especially like when this game first came out. Aim down sights does give you a decent pellet spread bonus, so be sure to aim down sights at longer ranges to make sure you're getting those pellets on target. The Sawed-Off barrel and Competition barrel also feature changes in movement speed, which you'll see right here. Now on their own, these barrels don't give you too much of a difference in your movement speed. You'll see that the Competition barrel is slightly slower, but the Sawed-Off is a little bit faster. And overall, I don't find them to be that significant, so I really wouldn't worry about that too much. It's only an issue whenever you start stacking different attachments that affect your movement speed, such as a grip or the stippled grip. Overall, I found the best barrel to choose really depends on your play style. I like to rush heavily, so the Sawed-Off works wonders for me because it's insanely consistent, whereas I use the Competition barrel to really hang back and play a little bit more defensively and pick people off more selectively. I really don't recommend using the Tempest Smoothbore at all, really because it just doesn't give you any significant trade-off. You don't really get a better one-shot kill range. You can aim down sights a little bit quicker, but honestly, I don't find that to be too much of a benefit, and you'd probably be better off using the base barrel at that point. Now onto the muzzle attachments. So if we take a look at the muzzle attachments, we can actually increase the range of the one-shot kills for each barrel. For this, we have 2 attachments. We have the choke as well as the monolithic suppressor. The choke tightens the spread, while the suppressor increases damage range and suppresses the sound of the gun. As a note, as far as I can tell, the choke does not actually increase damage, so don't expect to completely blow away your competition with it on. The choke and the suppressor seem to affect each barrel a little bit differently, so let's take a look at each one. The base barrel gets a good one-shot kill range buff with each attachment on, but they both add virtually the same distance, with the choke getting just a few inches further than the suppressor. It's a very small difference. For the Tempest barrel, the choke featured a further one-shot kill range as well, but about maybe 4 feet more as compared to just a few inches with the base barrel. The sawed-off got a good improvement on that one-shot kill range with both, and again, the difference between the suppressor and the choke being pretty darn minimal. For the big barrel, the competition barrel, the choke and the suppressor add a good maybe 5 feet to your one-shot kill range, while the choke was yet again only a few inches further away than the suppressor. Based off of just the range increase here, the choke seems to be the best option for furthest one-shot kill ranges on most barrel choices, even if just by a small amount. But to really weigh our options, we do have to look at the aim down sights penalties that we get for each. Now, before we go into ADS times of the 725 and all of its attachments, I wanted to go ahead and say that the choke has a negligible increase on aim down sights time, putting it close to the base aim down sights time of the 725, whereas the suppressor added about 2 frames to the base barrel, making it noticeably slower. So I'll go into this in more detail in the next section, but for those of you wondering what muzzle attachment really gets the most bang for your buck, stick with the choke muzzle attachment. Now onto the aim down sights times for the 725 and its attachments. The 725 shotgun overall features some of the slowest aim down sights times in the shotgun category, and this is probably done as a way to balance the overall power potential for this gun, especially at longer ranges. So let's go over all the attachments that affect aim down sights time, including barrels and grips, minus the optics, which I don't find particularly necessary to do well with on this shotgun. The base aim down sights time is around 19 frames or 317 milliseconds. This is a bit slower than some of the other shotguns we've looked at in other videos. The monolithic suppressor, as I stated before, adds about 2 frames to that, making it aim down sights at around 21 frames or 350 milliseconds. The choke, on the other hand, didn't seem to have too much of a negative effect on aim down sights that I could find, so the time I tested was around maybe 19 frames, which is close to the same as the base aim down sights time. If I could measure at more than 60 frames per second, I could probably find a small difference, but it seems to be pretty negligible. So basically, the choke is overall a better attachment unless you take into account the sound suppression boost that the suppressor gives you. The smoothbore barrel has an aim down sights time of around 17 frames or 283 milliseconds. It's a nice little boost to aim down sights time, but in my opinion, it's still not worth running. The sawed-off barrel gives the 725 its highest boost in aim down sights time, putting it at around 12 frames or 200 milliseconds, which is pretty dang quick. Given the crippling range it has compared to the other barrels, I think it's a fair trade-off. On the opposite side, we have the competition barrel, which is the big boy barrel of the 725, and it puts your aim down sights time to shame at around 23 frames or 383 milliseconds. That's a big ol' oof, and you definitely need to run ADS boosting attachments if you're going to be using this barrel. Next, we have the Merc foregrip, which puts it at around 16 frames or 267 milliseconds, which is around the base aim down sights time of the Model 680 if I remember correctly. Now the sawed-off stock puts it at about 16 frames as well, so it's about the same as the Merc foregrip. And then we have the Tempest Sport stock, which puts it at 17 frames or 283 milliseconds. Now given that aim down sights time is important, the sawed-off stock is 100% in my opinion the stock to use no matter what other barrel or attachments you use, unless you want to add a little bit more stability if you're using Slugs, for example. The Forge Tack Steady Grip puts it at 18 frames or 300 milliseconds, which, considering it doesn't have that much of an effect on sprint out time as well, which we'll get into, this attachment isn't really that great unless you're pairing it with the 5mm green laser for an added sprint out time bonus. Last, we have the Tack Laser, which puts your aim down sights time at 16 frames or 267 milliseconds. It helps, but not as much as with other guns. I'd recommend maybe using this to complement a longer range build of the gun, since that would help boost your aim down sights time a bit and the other lasers won't. But you'll be sacrificing your mobility, so choose carefully here. Now that we've covered the aim down sights times, let's go ahead and take a look at the sprint out times as well as the lasers. As I've stated before, sprint out time is the time it takes to go from sprinting to actually shooting, and you almost always want a faster sprint out time. The base 725 sits at around 17 frames or 283 milliseconds, which is pretty average you'll find compared to the other shotguns. Not really terrible at all. The 725, much like the Origin and the R9O, has 3 sprint out time boosting attachments: the 1mW and the 5mW lasers, as well as the stippled grip. Now the 1mW laser on its own takes it down to about 15 frames or 250 milliseconds, which isn't great. The 5mW laser, usually the best sprint out time boosting attachment, takes it to about 12 frames or 200. Every other shotgun in this game has a sprint out time of about 167 milliseconds with the 5mW laser on, so the 725 falls short here by a good bit, and I'm sure it was done this way for balancing purposes. Next, the stippled grip had little to no effect on sprint out time on its own, with my tests showing it at around 17 frames, which is similar to the base sprint out time for the 725. Stacking the grip though with the 1mW laser puts it at about 15 frames, and then stacking the green 5mW laser with the grip takes it down to our normal 167 milliseconds or 10 frames. So if you want the fastest possible sprint out time for aggressive playing, I really recommend the grip with the 5mW laser, and of course just being mindful of that green laser. Anytime you aim down sights, it will take the laser off, and anytime you are sprinting, the laser will not show. Overall, you'll find this shotgun is just a little bit slower to handle, and so it works well with the passive class, and it really forces you to have to slow down a little bit more and approach situations a lot more carefully, but you can still do some aggressive playing, especially with the sawed-off and the 5mW laser with the grip. Moving on to the stocks, there are two attachments here that I consider to be the best. Given that aim down sights time is more important than recoil control and stability for a shotgun, it narrows our options to just the Tempest Sport stock and the no stock attachment. Now looking back at the information we had on aim down sights time, you'll see the Tempest Sport stock took our aim down sights time to about 17 frames or 283 milliseconds, which is a nice boost, especially if you stack it with other attachments. But honestly, if you consider how a shotgun should be used and how you don't need to worry too much about recoil and idle sway, which is how much your gun moves while you're aiming down the sights, I think the no stock is the best option here because it will take your aim down sights time even further, down to 16 frames or 267 milliseconds, and on top of that, you do get a small movement speed bonus with the no stock attachment, whereas the Tempest Sport stock really only affects aim down sights time. Now on its own, the movement speed bonus isn't huge, but it helps, and I consider it like an additional perk, the cherry on top, to a good aim down sights bonus, and of course you can stack it with other attachments like the sawed-off barrel to really get the most out of being mobile and quick with your gun. Looking at the underbarrel grip attachments we have, you've probably guessed already that I will only recommend one out of the options we have, which is the Merc foregrip. The foregrip takes your aim down sights time to about 16 frames or 267 milliseconds, which can be helpful especially if you stack it with other attachments. The only issue with this particular one is that we get a small decrease in the movement speed for the gun. While again, the movement penalty isn't huge, if you stack it with other movement speed reducing attachments, you can really slow your movement speed overall. Since I like to be quick on my feet, and as fast and mobile as possible, I usually opt to avoid running the grip because I found other attachment slots to be a bit better geared towards my particular playstyle, but I'm not saying it's a bad attachment or option overall. The ADS boost is nice, and I find it helps complement a build more catered towards long one-shot kills, so you can offset the slow aim down sights time a bigger barrel or suppressor would add to your gun. Moving on to the guard attachments, yet again I find myself only really recommending just one of the attachments in this category. For this section we have the Forged Tack Steady Grip, which boosts your sprint out time as well as your aim down sights time. The interesting thing about this attachment though is I found that the ADS and sprint out time bonuses were pretty minimal if you just have this grip equipped. It takes your aim down sights time about 1 frame down, and your sprint out time reduction was pretty minimal. I couldn't even really measure it accurately in my program. The power in this attachment comes, as you would imagine, from stacking it with other attachments, like one of the lasers. Equipping the green 5mW laser with this grip, for example, takes your sprint out time to 10 frames, which is 167 milliseconds, and the fastest possible sprint out time for this gun. So again, I recommend this attachment on builds more catered towards mobility, seeing as how it pairs well with other attachments. Something I did want to mention about this shotgun is that Sleight of Hand is actually a pretty useful weapon perk to run in your setups for this gun. Now since this gun needs to reload after every 2 shots, it can get you killed if you're not careful. So running Sleight of Hand to increase that reload speed is something I really recommend you guys doing. Now it's not completely necessary, but I found it really helps quite a bit. And as you can see here, Sleight of Hand does reload a good bit faster, and if you are able to do an effective reload cancel, you can shorten it even more. Now for those of you who don't know what I mean when I say reload cancel, it's a trick that you can use by double tapping your switch weapons button, or simply by sprinting when your gun is reloaded, without having to finish the whole weapon reload animation. So as soon as you see the number in the bottom right go back up to 2, even though your gun looks like it's still reloading, if you do the reload cancel, your 2 shots will be ready to go. This is something that can be done with any gun in this game, and it does take time to learn for what gun you're using, but it's a nice little trick that can save your life every so often. Now let's move on to the final category, which is going to be the Slugs attachment. And now for the Slugs on the 725, in case you didn't know, this is the shotgun that you should definitely try running Slugs on, more so than other shotguns. The one-shot kill range is seemingly infinite as long as you hit chest up at longer ranges. Just take a look at this clip I got, and keep in mind that this was with the sawed-off barrel attachment.
We're in control.
Yeah, so it's pretty strong, but as you can see, that aiming was incredibly specific, and I had to lead that shot like crazy at that distance. Like with the other shotguns, hitting targets at this range is going to be pretty much near impossible in a public match or ground war. It's possible, and you can find some good clips on Reddit of people doing it, but it's really situational to be able to nail a shot like that. The strength here lies at medium range, where the slug is still traveling somewhat straight, and you can pretty much tell where the shot will land. The barrel choice does not seem to have an effect on one-shot potential from what I can tell, and the trajectory of the slug is also unaffected depending on the barrel. Because of this, the only factors I really used to determine which barrel I should use was the aim down sights time and the sway. Now, while the sawed-off barrel does have more sway than the other barrels, at the range you should be using this gun in my opinion, I found that the sawed-off's quick aim down sights time to be pretty fun to use to get those medium range kills, and for catching people completely off guard with them. You can use the other barrels, like the big competition barrel, if you choose to, but in my testing, I didn't really find much of a difference when using these barrels in terms of lethality. Since slugs are actually decent on this gun, try experimenting with what attachments you like. If you manage to aim with a little bit of idle sway, if you can handle that, maybe choose the sawed-off barrel and the no stock attachment for a snappy aim down sight speed. Now, if you want a little bit more control, switch it up and add a stalker grip for idle sway control, and don't really focus so much on choosing a barrel since the base barrel will probably do just fine. You could use that point for something else to help your sway instead. Now what I want to do now is show you a fun class to try that I came up with, and let me know how successful you guys are with it. It's mostly for fun, keep that in mind. I call it my I seemingly have no idea what I'm doing class. So equip the sawed-off barrel, the sawed-off stock, the brownless scope, the tactical foregrips for stability, and the slugs, of course. Now keep in mind, this is just for fun. It's not very competitive, but I just wanted to share how ridiculous this setup looks, and it plays actually pretty decently, and it's a lot of fun, so give it a try, and just let me know what you guys think of it. As we're now approaching the end of this long video, I wanted to go ahead and cover two classes that I recommend for this gun to be able to do the most damage. The first is my personal favorite, which is a rush-heavy aggressive class with extreme close quarters damage potential. First, equip the sawed-off barrel, the green 5mm laser, the sawed-off stock, sleight of hand, and the forged tack steady grip. This class is going to give you the fastest mobility and sprint out time for this gun, while unlocking a huge pellet spread that does an insane amount of damage, so long as you play very close quarters. It plays very much how a classic shotgun should in my opinion, which is very consistently so long as you're in that little range. Now for the next class I designed, this one is going to be a bit more passive for passive playing with the longest one-shot range I could get, where I recommend walking around corners with your gun up ready to fire and playing a bit more methodical. Now since you won't have a laser on this class, your sprint out time will suffer majorly, so having your gun up is a must prior to engagements. Now you're trading speed and mobility for range and lethality with this class. So use the competition barrel, the choke, the Merc foregrip, the sawed-off stock, and sleight of hand. Try not to push too hard with this class, and instead hang back a little bit and be more careful in how you approach situations, and keep your gun up ready to fire a lot, and you will be rewarded for it. You have now finally reached the end of the statistical part of the video, and if you've made it this far, I don't know what else to tell you except you the real MVP here. Now if you came for stats, feel free to click off this video now, as I'm going to share my plans for the next videos and what to expect in the next few weeks. Now with this guide wrapping up, I have finally finished the 4 shotguns of Modern Warfare. So now what? Where does a shotgun fiend like myself go? Well, for the next video, I'm going to cover the 357 Snakeshot attachment in depth. And it will probably be shorter than these shotgun guides, but expect some stats and an in-depth look at the gun. Now after that, I'm probably going to touch on the Master Key shotgun attachment for assault rifles, but that's probably not going to be that long of a video as well. We will be getting a new crossbow weapon soon that's been confirmed, earned via in-game challenges, So you can bet that I will have a guide for that as soon as I get my hands on the gun. Now after all that, well, I'm hoping we'll get some more content for Season 2 soon, maybe a new shotgun like the Spaz 12, where I'll probably cover some new guns then, and I've been thinking on covering maybe potentially the sniper rifles next as a category. A lot of YouTubers love to cover assault rifles and SMGs primarily, so I like to give the more niche guns a bit more screen time and attention. Now, let me know what you guys think of this, and please leave your suggestions below. Your comments do not get overlooked on this channel, so please don't be afraid to speak your mind. And with all that out of the way, I want to wish you all a happy rest of your day/night, and I will see you all in my next video.